whatever reason, it seems like my stream is only maxing out at 720 on regular horizontal, but 1080 on vertical. That's annoying, so I'm going to have to figure out why it's doing that. Cool. But anyway, we're going to have to do it a little bit later on, I guess, because we're going to start it. So let's get this going, shall we? Hello. Hi there. How's it going? Okay, the music seems to be going. Everything else seems to be pretty okay. Alright. So yeah, hi. Playing Marvel Tokon today. I've been getting destroyed in this game. So we're going to end up playing a little bit. I can't necessarily say that this is going to go super long because of how warm it is in here. But we're going to play. And also my CPU is chilling right now. So what's wild is I'm streaming at like 14, well, hot because the AC still hasn't been fixed yet. So I am streaming in the room that is furthest away from the in-room air conditioner that we have right now. So I step in here and I'm already sweating, and not in a combat way either. Let me pull up my dashboard over here so I can actually see chat while streaming. Here. So take a year off work today? Nope, went in. A choice. Okay. So on the first time of streaming this, I had already home crashing out. So oh goody, Eve crashing out, unheard of. All right. Now the question becomes: do I want to jump directly into regular combat, or do I want to continue doing the story mode, which I was working on previously? Because I already got the Avengers done, and I completed the X-Men on my own. Next would be the Amazing Guardians, Samurai Outriders, and then Knights of Doom. You didn't do it? Alright.
Amazing Guardians!
Serious woman approaches Spider-Man. The letter she casually hands him turns out to be an invitation to a tournament. Spider-Man finds himself in a bad spot, as usual, with villains getting in the way of his promise to Aunt May. So we'll do this, and then we'll go into casual matches. Now, mind you, there are some stable state cutscenes that will always happen in story mode, and then you have the comic book panel scenes, which are the ones that also it fucking wild that Galactica got fucking washed. But you'll see other moments that are more specific to the characters and the storyline that you're doing compared to this, which is a stable state. So you're going to see this in every playthrough. I'm just going to let this rock, let the people who have not seen this before take a peek at it.
So, boss, what you think? You sure, boss? I mean, they fought pretty well. Maybe we could spare this one for once? Okay, boss. It's showtime!
Oof.
Okay, next up is a darling little place. Homey, not fancy like the Shi'ar. Nice color scheme, green and blue. You're gonna love it.
And Peter, and someone is running. Hot. Ooh, I was born for president.
Yeah, you win this time. But you haven't heard the last of the superior foes of...
Jump.
Well, maybe I haven't seen the last of you, but I've definitely heard the last of you. That was kind of beneath me.
A little bit.
I'm so tired. Superheroing burns through so much material, right? Okay, Squirrel Girl. Can you handle this until the authorities show up?
I want her to be in this game.
Sure thing, Spider-Man. Tippy-toe and I can handle anything.
I want her to be a DLC in this game.
I bet you got important superhero business to do.
She's adorable. I want her in this game.
Yeah, important superhero business. The important is... Hello?
Petey! Oh, are you on your way? I just can't get these balloons inflated.
I'm on the way, Aunt May. Don't worry. For once, Peter Parker is actually gonna keep his promise.
Until.
Spider-Man!
The way you're dressed, you're either gonna try and sell me tickets to a Broadway show I can't afford, or you want to fight. Please, can we just not?
Don't worry, no fights.
Not for me, anyway.
Yeah,
Not right
anyway.
now.
Oh, that yet is not calming, lady. I don't...
Invitation for Spider-Man.
I'm sorry, I have a party to go to already.
I don't get a choice in this matter.
How come heroism never conflicts with something I don't want to do? Why can't supervillains attack when I'm supposed to be doing chores?
Oh, hey, Miss Valerie, what's up? Can't look at that.
Congratulations, citizens of
That,
planet
yeah,
Earth.
that's what I
You've
thought it
been
was.
selected for
Hey.
an amazing opportunity. Welcome to
Yeah, no, I definitely, I like her design. I do like her design. I wish she was playable.
Champion! Your best, bravest, and most violent fighters will compete in a tournament to win the honor to face the
Champion!
the supreme master of the pugilistic arts. But what happens if they lose?
Can he not just, like, read it later? No, because she pops this up across the world.
So truthfully, you don't want to lose. You probably will. And now, all selected leaders have received their invites. Next, they choose
Oh,
their teams.
if you think that,
In your team,
that
depends on your local
she's good,
culture. For
Storm.
example, the
Jesus.
Shi'ar employ an Imperial Guard, and their unit is 100, so they got to send teams of 100 against the champion. You get
4.
Are you sure, boss? That really doesn't seem fair. Yeah, I get it. 4 fantastic people went into space from Earth and ushered in their
There are
place for heroic
legitimately
acts
people
upon
who are mad that they're not in the
Earth.
game right now / yet.
Well, on the plus side, this should be pretty quick. Oh, that's right. I nearly forgot. The one little thing the boss hates more than people who can't fight is people who don't fight fair. Any signs of cheating and
Ba ba boom.
good luck.
I legit feel like this is going to get, if nothing else, this will get the channel copyright struck. So I'm just going to skip this one. If you really want to see it, it's the attract video that happens in the start of the game.
And all that. Hey, Aunt May. I know this is bad, but it might be a little late. No, yeah.
Peter
I'm
Parker
sorry.
doing Peter
What?
Parker things. My ass!
I was on a call, Goblin. You're so needy for attention. And rude.
Rude? I'll tell you what's rude, spider freak. Someone threatening to kill everyone on the Earth? That would include you. And only the Green Goblin gets to kill Spider-Man.
Nah, I mean, yeah. Yeah, Tokon is it's a fighting game, so do keep that in mind. But yeah, it's good. It's been a bit of a ride in order to get better at,
Brace yourself.
but
Final round.
Boom incoming.
Jesus fucking Christ.
Hold still, please. You just keep on coming back, Norman. I'll keep on knocking you down.
Now, mind you, this is CPU about level 3, so this is pretty normal. But I also don't play Spider-Man, so... I have included Green Goblin into my team here recently. But that's just because I got the final boss as a character, which is unlockable. But, and I was trying to use him, and he can be usable. Nothing like Marvel 2 or Marvel 3. Okay. It has its own little spin on things, right? So, not exactly like those. It does share some DNA, though. Like, the speed of the game, and more so when it comes to, like, things besides switching.
I must have kicked your ass enough to be on a first-name basis by now.
I'm hearing excuses. Why aren't you playing well? Why are you sounding so Asian right now, Eve? Why are you sounding so Asian? Stop that. But I'm basically having to, like, kind of relearn because I've never been strong when it comes to hyper fighters.
You're Spider-Man. I know I'm new and we, strictly speaking, don't know each other, but I'm a huge fan. What are your plans? Can I help?
Oh, definitely.
No!
She would have been fine.
Old or new, you always fall for the, oh no, an innocent is in danger. Boo-hoo. And now, this is mine.
That doesn't mean anything, Goblin.
Stop!
Head off and get some sleep. Alright, Eve. Catch you a little bit later
Spiders
on.
can glide. How come I wasn't bit by one of those? Now it'll be the Green Goblin fighting for the Earth.
No, it won't. Because...
You did have an invite. Of course you did. You're Spider-Man. Other people say you're not a big deal, but I love your whole underdog neighborhood hero vibe.
Not a big deal. Spider-Man, not a big
Genius,
deal.
Marvel.
The fuck?
Thank you for the huge vote of I'm sorry. I was on the subway and lost signal. But yeah, Aunt May, I'm so sorry, but I can't make the party.
We're gonna make that fucking party.
Yeah, I know. I'm disappointed too.
That sounded hard, Mr. Spider-Man.
No other choice. My aunt always gets the short end, but with great power comes great responsibility.
I absolutely agree. So how can I help?
No. I'm not averse to a team-up or two, but I do have certain standards. Namely, people I don't instantly have to save from a pumpkin bomb. You're
That's
not ready for this.
different.
You're too young.
Stop that.
How old were you when you started?
Too young. It's a miracle I'm alive. And you clearly don't know what you're doing.
Tell me something I don't know.
Pete, you're on some bullshit. You were 15. You were 15.
Different. Even more than I already was.
You were 15 when you started slinging webs across New York. Don't give me that shit.
No one understands. But it means I can't just stand by and watch while bad things happen.
Oh, you are so doomed. You remind me of me.
Put her on the team, Peter.
All I have is watching how you heroes do it. At a distance, trying to pick up what I can. Help me. Help me be better. Help me help people.
Yeah, that is true. Unlike Peter, who tends to drop family members and loved ones like hose change clothes.
I'll find you. This is too big. I'm in over my head. You're gonna drown. Okay.
You can get a choice in the matter.
Oh no. Okay, I guess we're gonna put going home on pause for a minute.
Are we in space? Like Captain
And
Marvel,
Marvel
does
does stuff here,
in
space.
She does.
Whoa.
Peter
But she's not the
fucking
only one.
Quill. I hate him in this game. I hate every single time I've had to go against him.
Oh no.
I have
Not you.
despised this motherfucker while fighting
What do you
against him
mean?
all.
Star-Lord? Spartak's throne rejector, infamous thief? Guardian of the galaxy?
Why couldn't we have Gamora?
And editor of your own Heropedia page to make it sound more impressive. You did not beat the Silver Surfer in a thumb war. Some of us read the revision history.
You'd be surprised how weak the Surfer's thumbs are. I think...
Oh, enough, Quill. Why on earth are we not on Earth?
Well,
I've been monitoring this competition and saw an opportunity. You need a team.
Well, I do need a team. And fast.
Happy to help out. If I get something shiny, you know, for the inevitable prize.
Of course. My spider sense is kicking in. I sense an ulterior motive. What about saving the world?
but money though.
Hey, I'm all for saving the world.
But money though.
But there's no harm in getting paid at the same time.
Okay, I do need people. I can work with you. We...
Wait, you're letting Mr. Absolutely beat up Galactus's big brother join and not me?
Cassette tapes aren't cheap,
That's what I
especially these days. Age, a beard, that's about
A
it.
legal driver's license for a star kid. Don't you have homework to
Oh,
do?
fuck you, Quill.
I can do this. I swear, I'm good.
Okay, I can see your passion, but I need to see you in action, safely. In a team, close up. See how we work together.
I excel in team-ups.
You need a sparring partner. I won't even invoice you. You know, to sweeten the deal. Look at me, the great altruist. I'll show her all the things that Star-Lord can do which aren't on my Heropedia page.
Let's get it.
Brace yourself! Final round.
Not working.
Leave this to me. Veterans!
Let's end this.
I'm on it!
Leave it to me.
butt.
I guess beaten up by a teenager isn't on my Heropedia page.
Oh, whoops. That's
The
on
girl has
auto.
skills, Spidey.
Am I in? Am I?
Fuck.
Well, no, not yet.
God damn it, Peter.
But I think this means I don't send you straight home when we get back.
Really?
Speaking of getting home,
I need the light to leave that girl's eyes soon enough.
Hold still. Next stop, Earth.
Alternate universe. Because we gotta get to Penny somehow. He's just
maybe
more
you
Peter
to
Parker,
cause my
more
sense of
Compass
Earth,
go
but
awry.
I don't think this is Earth.
Something's gone wrong.
you think?
Weird time and space distortion. The champion may be so powerful he warps everything near him.
Yeah. Yeah, that comes up in the other stories a fair bit
I
too.
think he's right.
What?
Spider and I were traveling, and there were some distortions. They're really interfering with her systems.
What are you doing here?
No. Thanks, Penny.
Wait, what?
Wait, Penny! What are you doing?
That would actually be pretty interesting storyline.
New York. We made it?
And so did Spider and Penny Parker.
Spider? Are you okay?
Penny?
Konnichiwa! Spider-Man's son?
Who is this person with the amazing robot?
She's Penny Parker. She's from another universe. And why are you here?
Wow.
Another universe? An actual other universe? Excuse me? I have to make her Heropedia page.
Just banging it out on that phone real
Cosmic
quick.
phenomenon that was approaching my Earth. And then the distortions from this champion must have brought us here? It hasn't been easy on Spider. I'll see what the damage is and...
Hostiles detected. Defense mode activated.
What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean?
I preferred your robot when it was less murdery.
Don't worry! I can fix her! I hope...
Using different symbols. Okay, so for example, this is one of the differences that's between this and say Marvel vs. Capcom, right? So Marvel vs. Capcom usually used a 2-button system in order to be able to switch between the characters, while this one uses a 1-button and direction system. The Marvel vs. Capcom games have different assists that you can choose that will always be that assist for that character. This one, the order will shift a little bit, and you can choose which order you want to have them in, right? But the main thing is you don't get all 4 characters at the exact same time. This is a bad show of it because I'm only going to have 3, but you get characters over the match by either breaking a wall and sending them to another area, doing a wall crash on a wall that doesn't transfer, or by losing a round. And you gain more characters that way. But everybody uses the same health bar.
Brace yourself. Final round.
Okay,
Here I go!
Leave this to me. Last shot! Enemy intercepted. Yeah! This should do it! Spider?
Just had to do a little bit of a reboot. Don't worry about it.
Spider operational. Initiating apology routine. Sumimasen.
I'm sorry. Spider feels awful. She was deep in calculations when we were dragged here, and the disruption created these unfortunate effects.
I do want to learn
What were
Penny
you
in this as
doing?
well, though. Or at least
It
figure
was
her out a little
cosmic
bit.
anomaly we were studying. It looked fascinating. If I don't rush, I'll miss it. I'd also just like to get home. Do you know how?
We'll work something out. But we have a save the world thing to do first. Because the champion's doing a fight me or die thing.
Oh no, I didn't realize. I have to help. Putting off fun science in favor of saving people is what being a hero is all about.
And it may solve your problem. The champion will offer a prize. If he can get you here, he can get you home.
Ah, well, I much prefer selfless heroism, but it would be very helpful.
Wait, she's younger than I am. Why can she join?
I've been on adventures with Penny before, and
She has an armored battle suit.
as opposed to breathable sports fabrics.
Hey. I made this costume
Bad
myself,
things can
much like
happen to
you.
Worse than the world ending because you can't get a team together?
Damn.
I fought Star-Lord and Penny's amazing robot.
Damn.
We work well together. I try hard.
She's got you on this one,
And
Pete.
you don't have any options. And neither do I.
Mentorship tip: stop making good arguments against me. You're in.
You got you by the web on that one, Pete. Like, you cooked.
But we're running out of time. None of this matters if we don't have an invite. So, we need to storm the goblin's lair, which means finding it, traversing a dungeon of murderous traps, pumpkin bomb gobby-lobbers, acid lakes, and
Nah, think laterally. That robot looks plenty advanced. I bet it could forge it.
you can't.
I could, but wouldn't that be bad? Forgery is a crime. I'm not a criminal.
Don't worry about it, Penny. It's for the sake of saving the
papers, your
Earth.
team leader is a criminal vigilante. In this world, a lot of what heroes do is thinking about the greater good.
Shouts out to being a
Your
scoundrel.
greater good leads to you getting rich.
The fuck you, Quill.
I'm not a hero. I'm hero adjacent. You know, I know how this all works. So, Penny, you want to compromise your ethical standards just a little to save the Earth?
I guess so. Let me design a template and get Spider to work. What's our team called?
A little much there, but a little too long.
Let's go with Amazing Guardians.
There we go.
And done.
Yeah, of course.
Look.
Oh no, they're using my invite.
No. Doom
Green
got
Goblin isn't
one.
even the worst person.
Doom got one on
It's all
there.
my fault. Promoter lady! Promoter lady! Don't forget about...
The Amazing Guardians! So, when I was printing, I had a quick read. What was the rule about cheating? Oh, if there's any, they'll destroy the Earth. Searching an invite is probably cheating.
It'll be fine. It'll be fine. Shut up. Shut up.
I'm sorry. I knew this flirtational criminality would have consequences.
No! I didn't think...
A completely genuine invitation. Welcome, Amazing Guardians. You're nearly there. However, one more thing.
I'm remembering the yet anyway when we met. It's fight me now time, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
You got it. But there's an itsy bitsy more to it.
Alright, alright, DJ.
Excuse me. Allow me to explain. The challenge of the champion! The thing about the champion is that he loves fighting, as much as I love pavilion outfits. So why even bother having a tournament? Why doesn't he just fight everyone? Hey! Don't you dare even think about stepping on my rhetorical question. Because he likes the best! He doesn't want to dirty his fingers on the throats of people who aren't worth it! So, we have a series of knockouts, and the winner gets a crack at the big guy! However, there is another problem. The champion will be watching. And if he sees a fighter who he thinks is below par... Ta-da! So here's the too long didn't read. To make sure you're all good enough to compete against the big guy, you first have to fight little old me.
Do you see why I want her as a character now? Do you understand why I want to have her as a playable character now? Not with the shit that she does in this, but...
Good.
Leave this to me. Spider-Man.
You bet, Spidey! Who ordered a Molotov cocktail? Not today. No problem.
Okay, so... when she's doing this, there are certain ones you can pop and other ones you can't. And the general goal on this match is to get to 120 in order to be able to do your special, right? But her bullet hell is more difficult with some characters than other. And then you get the Tokon attack.
You can't escape.
An example of Peter likely killing someone when he does that super.
Yep, that works for me. Welcome! You're in! And now is a fantastic time for friends and family to make a side bet up at the Casino Cosmico. You can make a lot of money off being 100-to-1 underdogs to face the boss. Much better than the 1-to-1 they're offering on the Avengers.
That is directly
Right?
pointed at
You know,
Quill.
I was quietly hoping I'd bump into Thor and ask him if he wanted to team up.
Hey, don't worry. Look at us. We're the amazing Guardians. We can't lose.
Hi! Congratulations, denizens of planet Earth! Allow me to introduce your glorious champions. The Fighting Avengers! The Unbreakable X-Men!
Oh, fucking aura. So it's gonna be deals. Yeah. I hope. I kind of hope. Yeah. I kind of hope it's not standard Thor. And I hope it's Jane. I just hope it's Jane.
Fighters, assemble! The challenge of the champion begins!
Because we already know that we're getting Phoenix Force Cyclops, so asshole Cyclops. But bigger asshole Cyclops. So it's hard to say like
No.
what way we're going to go about it then, eh?
Avengers?
We surrender.
That's it.
What happened to We Can't Lose?
Yeah,
That's before we had to fight the Avengers.
I was hoping not. Ooh. Penny. Ooh.
Let me explain everything. First, Loki stole the cosmic cube, which actually had the spaceship inside of it, the one that goes on the snuffle, and then
Maybe Ms. Marvel's got a point.
Nah.
They're kind of in a different weight class from us.
Nah. I want to get that side bet.
Different kind of sport.
I want to get that side bet.
Come on, Spider-Man. I know you.
And Spider, you've been in the Avengers before.
You won't quit. You never do.
Damn it, Quill. Things are bad enough that you're...
Frog could be kind of cool, you know. I just want. If it was Beta Ray Bill, I would lose my shit.
and then they assembled.
A fine history lesson, Ms. Marvel. Let's write the next chapter.
Brace yourself! Round one. Fight!
Ow! 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 Ow!
There you go. I'm all good.
Soaring justice! I'm here!
Yeah.
Leave it to me.
Understood. Ms. Marvel. On go. Spinning. I've got big dreams. Got ya. Boom. Bigger fist. There you are. KO. Boy. I be Captain America?
Round two.
Done this! Ms. Marvel! Help's on the way! Watch this! Here I go! Not working! Watch this! Getting started! Down you! Down you! Down you! I've got this!
Leave this to me. Spider-Man.
I'm not done.
KO. Whew.
100-1 odds.
Beat the Avengers?
Of course we did.
No, they beat the Avengers. You were just there, doing your usual underhanded, sneaky nonsense.
Ah, loosen up. If sneaky, underhand nonsense trumps your high-tech gizmos, whew, man, what does that say about your life's work?
Say that again. I'll...
Lose another fight? Cool it, Tony.
Beat his ass.
This is undignified. You should keep your ego more under control.
Yeah, Shuri.
Really? Are you really happy saving Earth is in their hands? The champion isn't a street mugger or a weirdo dressed up like they're from a petting zoo. This is serious.
I mean, Tony's only going to be more mad when Doom beats
This isn't
him.
something they can handle.
Hulk no like talking man when he's angry.
You'll be all right. I guarantee it. You can do it, and you will do it.
All right, have much of a choice in the matter.
I mean, thank you, but that's easy for you to say. You're Captain America. We're led by Spider-Man.
Hey!
I'm not as strong as him. I'm not as fast as him. I just go and face down gods with a piece of metal in my hand.
How? How do you do it?
Because someone has to. And today, that someone is you.
I'm sorry. I lost it. He's right. Again. You know what his real superpower is? Believing in people. Try it.
It is very interesting how, like, voice acting wise, Captain America in this is just earnest as all hell.
Okay. Now we've got to save the world.
Also, having Penny just look around, being completely and utterly fucking lost,
Like that to you?
is
Kind of amazing.
is hilarious. Like, what? Huh? What? Huh? What? What the fuck?
I
What?
would have tried to save the world anyway, of course.
Where is this?
Welcome! It is the home of King Deadpool! Ruler of Asgard, wielder of the Odin Force, and Majan!
Oh my god.
Majanyer? The fancy hammer! And isn't it my very best friend, the Spider-Man?
Oh, I know she doesn't know what's going on, but it's just very funny that they animated the in that singular frame.
Asgard.
It's just like, what? Huh? What?
I have
Huh?
always
What?
been
Huh?
interested in
What?
Norse myth. Or current affairs to you, I guess.
He's not the ruler of Asgard. He's
Strong mentorship tip. Don't be friendly. I said that we should grab a coffee once, and he stalked me for 6 months.
What a way to talk
What?
about your best friend, Deadpool! So, the Spider-Man, want to get a few beers, kick back, and reminisce about old times?
Can we please fight before he does anything weirder? Please? Where's the rest of your team?
Deadpool! We told you to shout if anyone turned up.
Thank you.
I was just catching up with my good pal Spider-Man.
No. Take it off. Take all of it off. The family have no sense of humor about imposters. They've become hypersensitive to deception over the centuries for some mysterious reason.
You, Loki. Because of you.
Wait. Blade.
Your team has Loki, Deadpool, and wow, some kind of Ghost Rider? Was there a loose cannon sale somewhere?
Some kind of Ghost Rider?
The fuck you mean some kind of Ghost Rider?
Well, you're new and I'm not local. No offense.
Lots taken. Let's do this.
His unique groove switch.
Brace yourself. Round one. Fight.
Here it comes! Burn it up! Sick burn! Nothing like a barbecue. Yeah, I'ma kick
Let me play my victory music.
Round 2.
No biggie. Get ready. Here we go. Come on. Come here.
We'll get away with this.
Here I go.
You bet. Miss Marvel.
Ow, my ass.
I'll give you one last chance.
That's his
And
level.
looks like you just
This is
blew
100.
it. Chill out. Putting you on ice. Nothing like a barbecue. Feel the heat on your right. I'm a kick.
Alright.
Yeah. I'd have taken offense too.
Okay, we're done here.
And Pete wants to leave.
Classic structure. We fought, now we team up. Deadpool will join you. Thwip, thwip.
Can I get some selfies here?
No.
Nope, we're leaving.
Run off and leave your good friend behind.
Oh, thunderstorm.
Come on, promoter, show some mercy. Get us out of...
See you later, Spidey.
I'm ready to go. It is time to leave. We're gonna go to the Savage Lands in order to fight Doom.
This is perfect. In my corner, 3 of the mightiest killers on Earth.
He's not wrong about that.
In yours, two girls and some random man.
He's not a random man. He's Star-Lord. And even though he edited his Heropedia page significantly, he is plenty tough.
You know, Doom, you've made a huge mistake. You've teamed up with bona fide serial killer Carnage.
He was available.
Wait, that's Carnage?
Yeah.
Back home, he's always been naughty, but a serial killer?
Yeah, Penny.
What? My spider is Unit 1, Venom is Unit 2, Carnage is Unit 3.
That is true. It's not Red Skull.
Stay focused. Remember the important thing. This isn't your world, Penny.
You take the rest, but only I get to kill Spider-Man.
This is a world where these are the monsters we have to stop.
Hey, Hana, how's it going? Just playing some Marvel Tokon, sucking at it, and just doing some shit.
Brace yourself. Round 1.
Delivery!
Receive my assistance.
No biggie.
What? Listen, Pete. Let Penny finish her story. I don't think that she's gotten to that ending part yet. So the computer is blocking almost everything that I'm trying to do.
stands beside you.
Oh, just the fact that the shits existed happened. Okay. Oh, that's right. There's a counter to that. Okay. Okay. What are those? Yo, fuck Norman. Yeah, so I'm still trying to get a little bit better at the combo structure on this. I don't know why, but for whatever reason, the old brain just isn't making the locks that it needs to in order to be able to like really get things going on this. You know, computer would be nice in order to be able to actually hit you at some point.
We won! Yay!
Hey!
Don't worry.
I'll be taking that.
I'm on it.
Look who was paying attention. Nice work, Ms. Marvel.
Hey, nice work, everyone. We beat the bad guys. Means they won't get the prize. I bet they do something significantly less wholesome than getting a girl in her robot suit home.
Yeah. And we're making good time.
Oh no. Oh no.
Maybe we'll get back in time for your party.
Oh no.
Spider-Man made his aunt sad by not being at a thing. If we rush, maybe we can...
That really is the last thing anybody has to worry about right now. I'll feel bad about it later. And likely forever. Unprocessed guilt's kinda my thing.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it is. It really is.
Hey! If you've got somewhere you'd rather be, I've got an idea.
Oh look, it's Slavic
How
milk.
about we knock you out and you just go home?
And a very pissed one at that.
Magic.
This is disappointing. You know, I often dreamed of the X-Mansion. A place for anyone alone to be not alone. I thought it would be more welcoming.
All right, so real small aside real quick. So one of the reasons that Magic is an asshole throughout pretty much all of this is because the disruptions from the champion doing what he's been doing. Actually, this is actually an explanation for this. So she's pissed off because the disruptions that the champion is doing to the like planes of existence that are around him is causing her to be extremely irritable throughout all of this. In their story, once the champion is broken, she actually comes to her senses and just like, I almost suggested for all the non-mutants to get fucking iced. Wait a minute. Ice is in murder, not ice is in no. But wait a minute. I am so sorry.
It usually is.
Query. Is this how we welcome people to the mansion?
Danger!
Seems against all my previous observations of Earth decorum. I would categorize it under subset rude.
Accurate.
Oh, I've never seen a robot like this before.
Shiari tech.
If I'm any judge of expensive space tech, and I am, I'd guess Shiar.
Yes, Shiar.
Konnichiwa! Before hostilities commence, can we compare our technology? You look fascinating.
Ah, konnichiwa. That fits my understanding of politeness. As such, I believe I should offer what hospitality I can. So, yes.
Leave me alone! Yeah, I get it. I'm running hot.
But
Note, Wolverine hasn't said a goddamn word throughout any of this.
Can we get a move on? I need to break this champion!
What is wrong with her?
Dunno. Started when the champion rolled into town.
See?
She's violent and out of control.
Oh, wow. And that's coming from Mr. World's stabbiest 100 plus years in running. So, what's your alternative to being violent and out of control?
Violent and
in control.
Want a demonstration?
There's drones. The drones come out at random, but they all work well in tandem with me.
Brace yourself! Round one. Fight!
here I go.
Impressive launch activated. Defense mode.
Go!
Defense mode.
Can't wait!
Ultimate offense.
Here we go! This'll do it!
Out. Damage. Major. Launch activated.
I've actually been using Danger as like the leader of the team that I have.
I'm here.
And she is she's fun. I actually do like her.
The battle engage.
Though she is like the opposite of the character I would usually the character style I would usually play.
All according to plan, Spider. Let's
Round two.
Defense mode. Assist. Engaging.
Team dominant. Full speed ahead.
Sudden danger.
I'm here.
Focusing.
Go!
Also, the X-Men were already weakened.
Well done, Ms. Marvel.
The X-Men were already weakened by a previous fight against a really strong mutant. They didn't say which one. But Wolverine was in the infirmary when you first start. Magic is one of the only ones standing, and her and Storm save a mutant kid from a mob that was on their no muties bullshit. And I'm trying to remember if there's anything else. Well, yeah, and Danger appears, and you have to beat her up in order to get her to reset her programming when she realizes that the Shi'ari world is just missing.
You're still raw, but you have enormous power and potential. And there's something else about you. Something that's hard to place.
The light hasn't left her eyes yet.
That's me, famously all enigmatic.
Well, please.
The shine, rather,
when you
not
travel,
light.
You should visit. I'd love to give you a tour.
Oh. Wow.
There is something about her.
Terrorist!
We'll watch Ms. Marvel's progress carefully. Who knows what she will become in time.
Not been a fan of Xavier's for a long time, and it's only been intensified
Pep talk, X-Mansion invite, Spideyman
every year.
My life is looking so up! That is excellent news. With luck, this adventure will reward us all.
But you already exchanged technology with the
I
Shi'ar,
hope we can make
so...
your party, Spider-Man.
Please stop mentioning the party.
Well, I'm just a casual hero-adjacent guy, you know, concentrating on saving the world.
How's that bet going?
Nothing else.
How's that bet going? Did you make the bet at the casinos?
It is heroic. Ugh, I feel so self-centered.
No, Penny, he's doing it for the paycheck.
Hey, not just for the paycheck.
I am kind of glad that they decided to go the route of doing the motion comic book panels for this one, because it actually fits.
Oh my. This is interesting. Does anyone know where we are?
Sure. We are...
Somewhere.
Mysterious.
Oh, thank heavens for the expert perspective there, Quill.
Congrats! You've just caused celebrations at the Casino Cosmico! That 100-to-1 payout has made people rich! But I won't tell you your odds on beating the champion. It would be, well, dispiriting.
Hey Val, your girl's on screen again.
Okay, this is the plan. Let me take the brunt. I've got a lot of experience being punched. I mean, I had that before I became a superhero, too. Most of all, remember what we're fighting for. Earth existing.
Hey, I shouldn't really be telling you this, but the champion doesn't actually destroy worlds.
As I was saying, your girl's on screen.
He doesn't? No, he kind of puts the whole world into a gym and makes them train all day and fight endlessly. It's not just annihilation.
Oh no, my aunt can't go to the gym all day? For starters, she hates
You gotta promote her.
That
No, the promoter. Not Miss Marvel, the promoter.
Well, I tried. Good luck.
Oh yeah, Squirrel Girl. Yeah. I want her too, of course, obviously, as I mentioned previously. But I think that you like the promoter as well, just spending time with her. And I just wanted her as a character because it's like, why not? The model's already there. And she already had, and there can be 2 random bullshit Go characters. 3 random bullshit Go characters. But yeah, I would love Squirrel Girl.
Individual atoms. Elder of the universe. Mr.
Hush. Words are beneath us. Actions are worth more than any word. And the greatest action is to fight.
I really wish that it had this version of the promoter as well as the second stage fight version of promoter instead of just promoter 2. Yeah, I would have loved to have this version of him.
A momentary. What a rough. Feast your eyes on a true warrior. Savor this cosmic might.
Ow!
Brace yourself. Final round.
Yeah.
Here we go! Maximum win! And a New York special!
What a rush. Interesting. Say a fair warning. Beware. You should leave it to me. Take this. Stand back.
Nice timing.
Stand back. What a rush. Stand back. What a rush. You had no chance.
My health. My health.
Brace yourself. Final round.
What a rush. This will hurt.
Not working. Down you. Gotcha. Hold still, please. Let me tell you a secret. With great power comes a great beatdown.
Stand back.
Eat wet. Revenge fighting.
Brace yourself. Leave it to me. Take what a rush. Take this. Savor this. Island save a fair warning.
Brother, what the fuck?
A momentary.
Final round.
Take this. Savor this. So you feel the power. You shall grow. Stand back. What a rush. Stand back. Savor. Don't worry. Savor this.
Now, I love the fact that the game is showing its whole ass right now as I'm streaming in comparison to normal when it has not been doing this at all, and I've been able to usually get to like stage 3 before I have to restart.
You know what you need? A spider.
A momentary.
Dead.
Brace yourself. Final round.
Savor these. What a this will hurt. Feel my power. Brace yourself. Now this.
No biggie.
Feel my power.
Oh, that's another round.
Brace yourself. Final round.
Delivery. You release it. Stand back. Stay down.
Sorry to keep you waiting. Penny!
Sorry.
Reed!
What a rock.
I can keep going.
Beware.
Reed!
What a rock. Don't worry. What a rock. Feel my power.
Spinning! This is gonna be fun!
How dare you?
Yeah! Ha! Fun for me! Spinny, spin, spin!
I don't know what happened there.
Not one yet. Feel my power. What a rock. You had no chance. Feel my power. You injured me. Oh, impressive.
Ooh.
You even drew blood. Most unexpected.
I try. All part of the spider service.
I mean, Peter does be fighting at like
Planet saved.
15%.
Aye.
Oh, good.
Spider-Man!
You're not done yet, dude.
And now, it only remains to decide upon your prize.
A prize? Yeah. One fight, one prize. It's pretty simple.
2 fights, 2 prizes. 3 fights, 3 prizes.
Hey, we'll work out a way to get you home. But I only get one chance to get loot from the champion. It's gotta be that.
What about?
No. We free the trapped worlds. There's no other choice.
That's not really one prize. That's emptying the boss's prize cabinet.
Yes. If you'd have me give up my treasures, we must fight again. And I will use my full power. You, who can barely breathe, must match fists with he who can wrestle supernovae.
Yeah, so, hey guys, how much do you like Dragon Ball?
And when you lose, your world will join my collection.
But you're gonna see a Dragon Ball ass design in just a moment.
Go home.
Should we?
I might be far from home, but I'm gonna have a homecoming later.
We don't go home when anyone's in danger.
And then it's gonna be a brand new day when I get home.
You would risk your own world? What about your aunt?
There's a lot of ants on every planet. They all need saving.
You shame me. You are correct, Spider-Man.
Yeah. Paydays can wait. Some things are more important.
You can't fight me! You can't even stand!
Come on! Less monologue. More fight.
How can you do this?
You only got a couple scratches on there. You good?
No one does it alone. We do it together. And we do it because we have to. We all know. With great power comes great responsibility.
Minus Quill.
There is no power as great as mine!
Yeah, again. So how do you guys feel about Dragon Ball?
It seems I am about to add another planet to my collection.
Brace yourself!
That's the collect champion that you unlock.
Delivery!
Got you!
Can you match proportionate spider speed? Yeah! Woohoo! Not way too
Assault!
Oh, we haven't gotten to round 3 yet, so...
Can you match proportionate spider speed? Yeah! Woohoo! Not way too slow! You got it! Watch this!
Not so fast! Got you!
Not working.
That had to hurt!
Ow.
No swinging!
Spider move! Spider shoot!
Unhand me! No! Stay down!
Still going. You never know when to give up.
Final round.
There's no way! A worthy foe!
It's me, Spidey!
I missed!
Eat wet! Leave it me! Spidey! Spider shoot!
Not bad at all! Too late! Look out! Got you! Really? Got you! Too late!
computer pulled out the training room combos on that one. What the fuck?
Brace yourself. Round one.
I'm on it.
Unexpected.
There you are. I'm coming in. Freeze. There you are.
Unexpected.
Spinny spin spin. Wow, you're a big fella. Yeah!
Alright.
But I'm bigger. There you go.
You got it.
Eat this.
Round two.
A worthy foe. Tricky. There's no way.
Leave it to me, Ms. Marvel.
Spinny spin spin.
I will survive. A worthy foe. You will not win.
On we go. On we go.
Not bad at all. This is far from over. Go down. Stop. Go down.
I'm all good.
Got you. Look out. Not so fast. Charge up.
Kid pay champion. You just lost your title.
Alright, that's round 2. Now we go into round 3. It's very weird because the only instances of like slowdown I've really had on this game have been in the cutscene.
Get out of here.
Got beat up by a T-Danger. Yeah, like the promoter is actually a more so heroic-esque character, or at the very least affable evil. Like doesn't want anybody to actually die just because of this asshat. And this is the version of promoter of champion that you get when the meter's full.
Unexpected. Almost had it. Will survive.
I'm on it.
Not working.
That's a perfect hit. So long. Not so fast. Not so fast.
Yeah, that's this round.
Round two.
I rolled it directly into that shit.
Spider, can you match proportionate spider speed? Yeah! Woohoo! Way too slow!
Okay, good. I was too high for that.
Delivery!
My life! Ah! My ass! Ow!
Excellent.
You big bitch! And that's his unique. Yeah, that's death.
Brace yourself. Round one.
Okay, let me choose something real quick. What is his... You... Okay, yeah, so YB. Alright, that's what I thought it was. Weird. And yeah, that's going to be on counter hit, so it does 1.5 times damage. Ugh.
Round two.
Boom incoming! Can you match proportionate spider speed? Yeah! Woohoo! Way too slow!
Hey, champion. You just lost your title.
Now you're in my element!
Elemental Outlaw!
Hey! Check out this sweet move! Elemental Outlaw! I will survive. Leave it to me. Unexpected.
You final drive.
That's gonna hurt. Oh, it didn't. Okay, wow. That took way longer than anticipated, but managed to get that done. Now the suit is kind of fucked up.
I told you! With great... Someone finish it?
With great power comes great responsibility.
No, your power is not great, and still it brings you this responsibility. A responsibility enough to face even me. Thank you. You have given me much to consider. What responsibility should I have?
Yes.
Spider-Man's wish is fulfilled! The worlds are freed. This Earth is spared. And for the lesson, I think myself responsible to fulfill all your wishes.
Can I have your belt?
No.
It just looks so cool.
No.
And get me home?
Oh, okay. He actually gave it to
I've been
him. Huh.
tracking a purple magnetic storm several days away from Earth, and would love to study it.
Snap.
That is possible. Let me see. Ah, interesting. I will accompany you. You will have need of someone with great power.
Years.
Oh.
Power.
And you?
I won't think less of you for asking for a selfie.
No, I've got another idea. You see, Spider-Man missed a party, and...
Oh! Oh, my.
Okay.
And May of Earth, my appearance has caused all chaos across the globe.
I'm
I
sorry.
have learned that this Peter Parker was among those whom I delayed. It is not his fault.
Would you like some cake?
No, I must not. For I am in eternal training.
And carbs are the one things I cannot defeat.
Thing I cannot
That is.
Alas, I must go.
I feel that way too hard.
I need to transport a young woman back to her home dimension and confront an unusual cosmic phenomenon.
Oh, I understand. Schedules are so difficult now. Oh, Petey!
Aunt May, I'm so sorry. I'm okay, but there was an accident, and I...
Look at you. Sit down. Oh, you poor thing.
She doesn't know in this timeline, does she?
You'll never believe what happened. That champion man from the sky came by. He was so kind and tall.
Is he gonna kill her or you gonna fuck her? He wasn't gonna kill her. The second one would have been more of a possibility.
He looked very good in a suit. You should get a nice suit.
What in the fuck? Hey, Mav. Any idea if that's supposed to be an actual design on a creature that we should know, or no? Because Champion looks like he's... Oh, it's Thanos. Okay, never mind. While Champion's just like, this is going to be fun. Oh, hey. And Cosmo. Champion of the Galaxy. Good old Josh Keaton getting another fucking paycheck. Oh, really, that's nice. That's cute. Go ahead and skip that. So I have 2 more of these I gotta finish. Each of these take about an hour and a half. But we're not gonna do that right now. We're going to go ahead and get back into. We're gonna get into a little bit of ranked, and then I'm probably gonna end up dipping. So this is the team that I have for online play at the moment. Danger, Storm, which I'm kind of mixed on if I'm going to end up changing out. Green Goblin and wow, goddamn Ghost Rider. So I'm still trying to figure out the composition, right? Because originally I had Danger, Storm, Hulk, and Champion, but Champion makes it a little bit more difficult because it does not play well with others. It's doable, and I might switch back to it because it's a team that I'm kind of used to at this point. But it's been a little bit of a challenge in order to get it to work well with that team composition.
The champion.
I don't want green.
The champion.
And each character has a number 8 color that I'm going to have one hell of a time actually like unlocking, because you have to do like certain skill challenges in order to be able to get that. But Storm has her punk rock outfit. Danger is the RGB Danger. Hulk is yellow, and then Champion. Which also, this is kind of cool, where in which you can just change it to be the defaults in case like you have an issue of color blindness or any other problems when it comes to that. And I was getting my ass beat up and down the street in ranked, so we're going to do some casual matches. Because once again, I don't know what it is, but for some reason, whenever it comes to hyper games, I've just always had a little bit of a hard time getting the combo composition down. Admittedly, that's me in most fighting games when it comes to combos, minus like 3D fighters. So Tekken and Virtual Fighter, I can generally figure and feel shit out. But when it comes to hyper games, hyper style games and tag games and stuff like that, I have the hardest ass time.
Precision strike. Getting started. Precision strike. Engage. Precision strike.
And also my timing is almost always awful when I'm calling one of the assists. So I'm trying to get better at it.
Brace yourself! Round one. Fight! Precision strike.
Doom stands beside me.
Recovery. Eject.
You need to go over there. Ah, that was too close. Oh, too far away. And I decided to attack on the bottom there. Gotcha on that one. Other person, I have 7 wounds. What?
Be grateful to do.
Oh, I shouldn't have did that.
Receive my assistance. Doom stands beside me. Someone ought to be grateful.
I got too mixed up in fighting Doom that I didn't end up actually hitting Deadpool.
Round 3.
Doom. Be grateful.
I have escaped my cocoon. I am far more than a simple training device. Now, I'm the next man. Illogical behavior.
Be grateful to do.
Impressive data.
Receive my assistance.
Oh, that's an overhead.
Get off.
Get off me.
Doom stands beside me. Be grateful to do.
I suppose I await your call.
Round 4.
Yoink!
Again. Fighting. Doom stands beside me. A worthy foe. Be grateful to do. Perfect hit.
So the one positive when it comes to Champion here is that he has an almost instant anti-air.
Be grateful to do.
Unexpected. Take that. Show some honor. Here's my aim. Diamond Breaker. A worthy foe.
Alright. That worked out. It was very sloppy. It was very poor, but it worked out.
Brace yourself. Round 1. Precision strike. Engage. Precision strike. Engage. Impressive data. Drive active.
I'm here.
That was me. Drive active.
Again.
There.
Receive.
Drive activated. Focusing. Precision strike.
So that's gonna hit him in a moment. Like, as long as that one's charging, and it takes a while for it to charge, but as long as it's charging, it will hit him as long as I don't get hit.
At any time.
Provided they're not blocking.
Receive my assistance. Doom stands beside you. I will go. It's not over.
Ah, stop blocking too early.
Receive my assistance.
Stop blocking once again. Like, I'm trying to push the issue a little bit too hard and too fast. I'm getting punished as a result. Oh, should have did that. Okay.
Be grateful to Doom. How can this be? Doom stands beside you. Receive my assistance. I summon your demise. Magneto controls all. You brought out Iron Wrath. I summon your demise. Be grateful to Doom. Metallic might.
Okay, so he was just gonna range me out with that one. Alright, that's fine.
It is my time. Iron Wrath. Doom stands beside you. I warned you. I summon your demise. You are outmatched. Metallic might. You are outmatched. Be grateful to Doom.
Cower before the storm.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
You cannot resist.
Just begun.
You have nowhere left
Well.
to run. I summon your demise. Reveal yourself. Metallic might.
Ah. Alright, Eric.
Brace yourself. Round one.
Doom stands before you.
Impressive takeoff. Prepare yourself. This is not a drill.
Again.
Target vulnerable. Maximum velocity. Activate munitions deployed. Focusing. Precision strike.
Be grateful to Doom.
Recovered. Assist.
Someone order bullet holes?
Block activated. The battle continues. Maximum velocity.
Here I go.
Got him that time.
I apologize.
I'm ready to go.
Round two.
Block activated.
Doom stands beside you.
Proximity close.
Be grateful to Doom.
Bop, bop, bop.
Damage. Forward system. Engage. Precision strike. Target PC. System swing.
Receive.
That's going to hurt. No! I thought I was far enough away and I was trying to activate a super and it just said, nah, you're not going to activate a super, you're just going to walk just a step into it. Ugh. And that's an overhead.
Your call.
Get off! Separate team engaged. Unit deployed. Team engaged. Box deployed. Team engaged. There! Prepare yourself.
Receive my assist. I will go.
Impressive data. Focusing. Target lock achieved. For PR! Focusing. Maximum velocity.
That's unfortunate.
My time.
Round 4. Target vulnerable.
Found you.
I'm here. For PR!
Magneto controls all. Steel yourself.
Recovered.
Summon your demise.
Doom
stands beside you. Metallic might. I summon your demise. Metallic might.
Box deployed.
Pathetic. But how?
For PR! Unit deployed. Eject.
Okay.
Damage major. Engage. Activating anti-Omega protocol. I have many
This is gonna kill.
teams designed to counter your techniques. Like this. Further battle. Final round. This is not a drill. Box deployed. Focusing.
Your master now. Magneto controls all. I summon your demise. Magneto controls all. I summon your demise. You are outmatched. I summon your demise.
Impressive data.
But how?
Engage.
Not yet. Magneto. Metallic doom stands beside you.
Damage minor. Unable to move.
I'll paint you like one of my anime girls.
Well,
How's this? Or this?
Player 1 wins.
that sucked. So I'm seeing what that person is doing when it comes to their Magneto. They're just using them to zone. Frustrating, but can't say I'm terribly surprised. That's it. I'm not particularly good at this game. I'm trying. I'm not particularly strong at it though.
Here's danger. Strutting in, all cool and composed.
Sudden danger.
That was fun. Here for support. I like that.
Kinetic energy.
That was me.
Moment of truth.
And let's try another one. See here we go. Oh, goody. I'm not surprised I'm seeing a lot of this. Like a lot of Magnos, and the ones that I weren't playing on stream, I was seeing a lot of Blade.
Brace yourself. Round 1.
Proximity over.
All right.
Kinetic energy. For GR. Sudden danger.
Turn down.
Persistent threat. Prepare yourself. Target vulnerable.
We're gonna chalk that under idiot savant moment.
At any time.
Round 2.
Yeah.
Come on!
The battle continues. Target vulnerable.
All right.
I can no longer obtain.
Ready when you are.
Round 3.
Counterattack.
You're good. Worry no. Come on!
Sudden danger.
I'm here.
Prepare yourself.
I think that they did light, medium, and then heavy in order to get that auto.
All right!
Fuck it. I got an auto too. Oh, the auto command didn't. The command grab didn't work. That's a. Yeah. Oh.
Just begun. Help's on the way.
Ah.
I am always ready.
Round 4.
You got it. Just begun. I'm fine. Now. Help's on the way.
It's over. Unexpected. Not so good. Now be gone.
The fuck you do? Really? Okay.
Final round.
No way in hell. Got you. No use. Go down. Finishing hold. You had your chance.
Bento win, baby.
But this battle is over. No more to fight.
Help's on the way.
Oh, they spammed C on that one so fucking hard. Okay.
There's no way. Surprise! All right. Here I come.
I will dance.
Yeah, I'm dead. Yep.
Player 2 wins.
You're getting caught by mechanics on.
Brace yourself. Round 1.
Melee mode. Kinetic energy. Target vulnerable. Prepare yourself.
Try again.
Damage player. Armor failure.
All right.
Focusing. Box deployed. Beam engaged. Precision strike.
Okay.
I apologize for the overwhelming.
At any time.
Round 2.
Sudden danger. Prepare yourself.
I got you.
Why did I stop blocking?
Not bad. Deal you know. All right. You need my help.
Launch protocol go. Kinetic energy. Repositioning by force. Recovered. Precision strike.
Here I go.
Okay, got the overhead on that.
I can no longer.
I'm ready.
Why did it start us on the opposite side? What? Again, I keep trying to do stuff in between some of these combo sequences where I really need to just start holding them. Because just holding the block in order to just wait, it would be a lot less health adverse in comparison to doing what I just did there.
You need more Tag home.
Okay.
Come on.
Leave it to me. Here's my aid. Get off.
Every single fucking time. And I need to stop doing that because it's going to leave me way too open for too often. Just not enough in order to bring somebody else in. Okay.
Excellent.
Really had to play that a lot more patiently than what I've been expecting inside of this. You lose one and then you leave. Okay, it's casual, so whatever, I guess. Let's see here. Yeah, 200. Yeah, I'll go ahead and call it here because I know the map's going to get started up here soon, and then also I got some other stuff I'm going to do. Not exactly sure what we're going to be doing tomorrow on Digital Clubhouse TV's stream. Wow, and also Shiki does stream, and also the Mallow Man without a W stream. But we're going to be doing something tomorrow. As for me, I do have another stream I'm going to have to do sometime very soon. I just got to drag my Xbox back here in order to do it. But until then, catch you next time. Your exit from the hunt is on the left. I will see you soon. I'm going to try and make it not as long of a time ago in comparison to how long it takes. Not to mention, I got to try and figure out why I'm only getting 720p horizontal when I can stream up to like 4K without an issue. So we're going to see how that goes and try and figure that out. But thanks, everybody. I'll catch you next time.